So if you want to learn a new language quickly, the absolute worst thing you can do is, well, sit down and read a textbook dialogue about a perfect sunny day at the beach.
Right. I mean, it sounds nice, but it does not really work.
Exactly. Think about it. If you want new vocabulary to actually stick in your adult brain, you do not need a pleasant afternoon. You need, like, a disaster.
Oh, for sure. You need a terrible, stressful, absolutely chaotic morning.
Yes. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to look at how a highly relatable, overwhelmingly stressful scenario is actually used as a brilliant tool for language learning.
It is such a fascinating topic.
Right. So we are unpacking a practical source today. It is a lesson titled English Speaking Practice. A busy morning. And it features this very simple dialogue between two characters, Emma and Daniel, followed by, vocabulary breakdowns, speaking exercises, and a comprehension test.
And on the surface, if you just glance at the outline, it looks like a standard language resource.
Like any other textbook.
Exactly. You read a story, you learn some words, you take a quiz. But what is really fascinating here is the hidden architecture beneath that surface.
Yeah, the psychology of it.
Right. We are going to explore how this seemingly basic lesson leverages narrative psychology, how it taps into the brain's survival mechanisms, and uses active practice techniques, things like shadowing.
Shadowing, right, which is so cool.
It really is, and it builds not just language skills, but real-world under-pressure confidence for the learner.
Okay, let us unpack this by starting with the story itself. The narrative setup here is incredibly specific and, honestly, painfully familiar.
Oh, highly relatable.
Yeah. We have this character, Daniel, and he wakes up in a panic because his alarm failed.
A classic bad morning.
The worst. He rushes out the door only to realize he missed his bus by, roughly 30 seconds. So he has to walk to work.
Which just adds to the stress.
Completely. By the time he finally arrives, he is physically exhausted, he opens his laptop, and he is instantly drowning in a mountain of urgent emails.
Just an awful start to the day.
Right. Then we have the second character, Emma, who acts as this incredibly empathetic sounding board. She listens to his whole chaotic rant and simply tells him that he had a rough start.
It is a brilliant response, honestly, because she validates his experience perfectly.
She doesn't try to fix it right away.
Exactly. She does not jump in to try and pull up his inbox, and she doesn't offer that, toxic positivity. She just acknowledges the friction of what he went through.
But here is where I want to push back a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
This whole scenario sounds more like a cold open for a mundane workplace sitcom than a traditional educational text.
I can see that, yeah.
Right? So if you are designing a lesson to teach someone a completely new language,
Right.
why start with such a stressful, everyday nightmare?
It seems counterintuitive.
It does. Wouldn't it be better, cognitively speaking, to teach English using a happy, positive story? I mean, why not the sunny beach vacation?
It is a really logical question, but that relatable stress is actually the secret engine of this entire lesson.
The stress is the engine.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture of how human memory works, we have to look at the brain's priority system. Our brains are not designed to remember the perfectly fine, completely average, sunny days.
Because nothing bad happens.
Exactly. Those days do not require problem solving, so the brain just lets them fade away. We are biologically wired to remember the days when things go wrong.
Because negative experiences trigger a survival response.
Yes.
Like the brain says, hey, this was a threat. Remember this so we can avoid it tomorrow.
Exactly that. When you experience stress, even the mild, relatable stress of missing a bus, your amygdala, which is the brain's emotional processing center, well, it tags that moment as important data.
Wow, so the emotion makes it important.
Right. By using a frustrating morning as the foundation of the lesson, the creators are deliberately grounding the English language in genuine, universal emotion.
That makes so much sense.
When the learner is practicing this dialogue, they are not just staring at abstract words on a whiteboard. They are learning the specific vocal tools needed to express a daily frustration.
Because everyone on Earth knows the visceral feeling of being overwhelmed.
Yes. So when you learn the target language to describe that exact heavy feeling, the vocabulary suddenly has weight. It is instantly useful.
That changes the whole perspective on what a lesson should be. Grounding the language in emotion makes it stick.
Definitely.
It is sort of like the difference between touching a lukewarm stove and a hot one. You learn the word hot much faster when there is a real sensation attached to it.
That is a great analogy, yeah.
And that flows right into the specific vocabulary this lesson highlights. because the conversation seamlessly shifts from the morning disaster into the specific phrases used to solve it.
The toolkit, basically.
Right. The lesson pulls out 4 main expressions for the learner to focus on. Rough start, take a break, slow down, and one step at a time.
4 very intentional, heavy-lifting phrases.
And here is where it gets really interesting to me. When you read those 4 phrases in order, rough start, take a break, slow down, one step at a time, they feel less like standard vocabulary and more like a sequence of life advice.
Like a therapy session.
Honestly, yes. It sounds like something printed on a motivational poster in a therapist's office. Are these really just vocabulary words, or is the source actually giving us a sequence of psychological advice disguised as a language lesson?
It is absolutely a psychological toolkit. And that is what elevates this from a simple vocabulary list to a brilliant emotional arc.
How so?
Well, if you analyze those 4 phrases, they form a complete roadmap for emotional regulation. Let us break down the underlying logic.
Okay, let's do it.
The first phrase, rough start, is the diagnosis. In psychology, there is a concept called affect labeling, which basically means putting your feelings into words.
Naming the emotion.
Right. Studies show that simply naming a negative emotion actually decreases the response in the amygdala.
So by teaching the learner to say, I had a rough start, the lesson is teaching them how to clearly label the problem without catastrophizing.
Exactly. It implies a boundary. The beginning of the day was bad, but the whole day is not ruined.
It is containing the spill. A rough start is just a start. So
Yeah.
that is the diagnosis. Then we move to the middle phrases. Take a break and slow down.
Right. If rough start is the diagnosis, take a break and slow down represent the physical intervention.
A physical action.
Yeah. In the narrative of the lesson, Daniel decides to get some coffee. He physically removes his body from the vicinity of that mountain of emails to reset his nervous system.
Which is so important.
It really is. The vocabulary is explicitly teaching the learner how to articulate the need for a physical pause. It is giving them the language to advocate for their own nervous system in an English-speaking workplace.
Which brings us to the final phrase in the sequence. One step at a time.
And that is the cognitive reframing.
Okay, the mental shift.
Yes. After diagnosing the problem and after taking physical action to calm the body down, one step at a time provides the mental framework needed to move forward and actually tackle the emails.
So the vocabulary here is doing double duty.
Completely. Yes, you are learning English, but you are also internalizing a mechanism for handling workplace anxiety.
And by embedding this arc of emotional regulation into the lesson, the phrases become highly relevant to the learner's survival in the modern world.
Exactly. That relevance is what signals the brain to store those words in long-term memory.
So you are basically learning how to manage your anxiety and learning a language simultaneously. That is brilliant.
It really is a smart design.
But understanding the psychology of the words is really only half the battle, right? Because it is one thing to intellectually understand the calming nature of these phrases, but if your jaw tenses up and you panic trying to pronounce them out loud to a native speaker, you are instantly right back in stress mode.
Oh, absolutely. The physical speaking part is terrifying for a lot of people.
So how does the lesson bridge that gap between knowing the word and actually saying it? Because the source heavily emphasizes active physical exercises, specifically a technique it calls shadowing practice.
Shadowing is a transformative technique in language acquisition. The source instructs the learner to listen to the audio lines and repeat them out loud immediately.
Just echoing it back.
Right, trying to match the exact rhythm and intonation of the speaker.
When I was looking at this part of the source, it instantly reminded me of singing along with a favorite song on the radio.
Oh, that is a perfect way to look at it.
You're right. Like when you are in the car and a great song comes on, you are not reading sheet music. You are not analyzing the grammatical structure of the lyrics.
You're just feeling the music.
Exactly. You're just trying to match the exact groove, the pitch, and the breath of the original singer. You are mimicking the flow, catching the wave of the music.
That is a highly accurate analogy because spoken language is fundamentally musical. It has what linguists call prosody.
Prosody. What is that exactly?
It is the rhythm, stress, and intonation of speech. It is the music of the language. What is fascinating about this section of the source is how it explicitly sets the rules of engagement.
The rules for shadowing.
Yeah, there is a critical quote in the text that we have to highlight. The lesson specifically tells the learner, do not worry if your pronunciation is not perfect.
Which feels almost rebellious.
It really does.
If you think about traditional language classes, the focus is entirely on perfect pronunciation. The teacher stops you if you mispronounce a single vowel.
And that constant interruption creates a hyper-analytical state that just destroys fluency. The adult brain struggles with new phonemes, the distinct sounds of a new language.
It gets stuck.
Right. If a learner is paralyzed by the fear of making a grammatical mistake or mispronouncing a syllable, they will sound robotic and unnatural, even if their sentence structure is technically flawless.
So this lesson prioritizes the groove over the grammar.
Exactly. By repeatedly shadowing a sentence like, I just had a really busy morning, the learner is bypassing the analytical grammar center of the brain and directly training their motor cortex.
Motor cortex. So we're talking about actual physical muscle memory.
Precisely. Speaking a new language requires your tongue, your lips, and your facial muscles to move in entirely new sequences.
So shadowing is like an athletic drill for your face.
That is exactly what it is. When the source says, do not worry if your pronunciation is not perfect, it is giving the learner permission to focus purely on the physical momentum of the sentence.
Just keep moving.
Yes. If you master the underlying beat and melody of English, you will actually sound much more fluent and understandable to a native speaker than someone who pauses for 3 seconds to ensure every single consonant is scientifically perfect.
Because communication is about flow.
It is about not losing the beat of the conversation.
I love that. But wait, here is where things get a little complicated in the methodology of the source.
Okay.
Right after we established that rhythm is more important than perfection, and right after we just went through this beautiful emotional arc about taking a break and slowing down, the lesson suddenly introduces a quick speaking test.
Ah, yes, the comprehension section.
Yes, and the instructions for this test are very demanding. The learner hears a question like, why was the guy tired? Or how did he get to work? And they have to answer out loud in an empty room before the correct answer is revealed on the audio track. I have to admit, I want to challenge this. We just spent all this time focusing on relaxation. We gave them the training wheels of just mimicking the audio. Doesn't throwing a pop quiz at the learner suddenly spike their cortisol and add stress right back into the mix?
It sounds like it would, yes.
Is active recall like trying to remember a Wi-Fi password without looking at the back of the router? You are just forcing your brain to dig the pathway through pure friction.
That Wi-Fi password analogy is spot on, and that friction is exactly why the test is there.
Really?
Yeah, it might seem contradictory to introduce a test after a lesson on relaxation, but this raises a fundamental point about cognitive load and how true confidence is built.
Okay, I am listening.
This is not a punitive test. There is no teacher grading the learner with a red pen. It is an exercise in the generation effect.
The generation effect. Unpack the mechanics of that for us.
So when you are listening to a story, or even when you are shadowing the audio, your cognitive load is relatively low. The training wheels are still on.
Because the audio is leading you.
Right. The audio track is doing the heavy lifting of initiating the sounds. But in the real world, when a coworker walks up to you and asks a question, you do not have a script.
No, you do not.
You do not have an audio track to shadow. You have to retrieve the information from your own memory and generate the language completely from scratch.
You have to build the sentence out of thin air.
Exactly. And doing that requires a completely different neural pathway than just repeating what you hear.
That makes a lot of sense.
This quick speaking test forces the learner to shift from passive absorption to active generation. By making them speak the answer out loud before the audio confirms it, the lesson is simulating the cognitive pressure of a real-life conversation, but doing it in a completely safe, controlled environment.
So the friction is the point.
Yes. And to your point about friction, the mental struggle of trying to remember the phrase, that exact moment of hesitation where your brain is searching for the words, that is when the neural pathway is physically strengthened.
And if they mess up,
if they get it wrong, or if they stumble, the audio provides the correct answer immediately after, resolving the tension.
So the test is essentially a bridge. It bridges the gap between leaning on someone else's rhythm and actually trusting yourself to generate your own rhythm.
That is a great way to put it.
It is a controlled simulation of anxiety so that you don't panic when it happens for real.
And that perfectly aligns with the lesson's final overarching message. At the very end of the source, it leaves the learner with a specific mantra.
What is it?
Keep learning, keep speaking, and do not be afraid of mistakes. The test is not there to catch you failing. It is a private sandbox designed to let you make those mistakes safely so you are desensitized to them when you speak in public.
That is incredibly thoughtful educational design. It takes what could be a scary pop quiz and turns it into an exposure therapy session for building confidence.
It really does.
So what does this all mean when we pull it together? We started with a very basic premise, right? A practical English lesson about a guy having a bad morning. But looking closely at the source material, the brilliance really lies in how it manipulates human psychology.
It combines a highly relatable narrative that triggers the brain's survival memory, an emotional vocabulary arc that teaches workplace regulation, and then it physically wires those lessons into the motor cortex through shadowing and active recall.
It proves that mastering a language is so much less about memorizing perfect grammar rules from a textbook, and it is much more about finding your physical rhythm, understanding the emotional utility of the words, and completely embracing the friction of your own mistakes.
And if we connect this back to the broader picture, the underlying principles we found in this source are universally applicable, even if you are a native English speaker.
Absolutely. Because, think about how often we all get entirely overwhelmed by our own busy mornings.
Oh, constantly.
We all have days where we miss the proverbial bus, the alarm doesn't go off, and we end up buried in a mountain of urgent emails.
It is just a part of life.
It is. The psychological arc we discussed, diagnosing the problem with a rough start, taking the physical action to take a break, slowing down your nervous system, and mentally framing the rest of the day one step at a time. That is not just a language lesson for beginners.
No, it is a daily practice we all need reminding of.
Sometimes we all need to actively practice the way we communicate with ourselves, especially under stress.
We all need a supportive listener in our lives to listen without trying to fix everything, and we all need a structural reminder to step away from the keyboard and grab a coffee.
That is a great takeaway for all of you listening to apply tomorrow morning. But there is one final lingering idea from the source material that I want to leave you with today.
Oh, this is a good one.
At the very end of the practice section, the lesson gives the learner a specific challenge. It says, try to speak without reading.
Just relying on yourself.
Right. It challenges the learner to step away from the script, to just feel the rhythm of the language, and produce the words naturally based on muscle memory.
Stepping out into the unknown, trusting the prosody they have absorbed.
Yes. And looking at that instruction, it makes you wonder about our own daily native interactions.
How do you mean?
Think about the way you talk to your coworkers, your friends, your family. How much of our own communication is truly original?
Oh, wow.
Are we actually inventing new sentences from scratch every day? Or are we all just unconsciously shadowing the rhythms, the tones, and the catchphrases of the people we spend the most time with?
That is a really wild thought.
It is something to mull over the next time you catch yourself using a phrase you never used to say, just because your best friend says it all the time. Are you speaking, or are you just shadowing?